Every morning, before the world makes its demands on you, a decision is already waiting. That decision will determine whether you lead the day or spend it reacting. Most people wake up and immediately give their power away. They rush, they scroll, they complain, they negotiate with weakness. Then they wonder why their mind feels scattered and their life feels heavy. Mastery does not begin in the big moments. It begins in the quiet discipline of the morning. The first thing you must do is wake up on purpose. Do not wake up by accident, and do not wake up late. The time you choose to rise is the first command you give yourself. When you delay it, you teach your mind that comfort is stronger than intention. When you honor it, you establish authority over yourself. The second thing is to get out of bed immediately. Do not lie there thinking, planning, or doubting. The bed is where discipline dies. Movement breaks hesitation. Action silences excuses. The third thing is to make your bed. This is not about cleanliness. It is about order. Creating order outside of you reminds the mind that chaos is not in control. One completed task creates momentum. The fourth thing is to stay away from your phone. The moment you look at it, you allow other people's priorities, emotions, and opinions to enter your mind. If you let the world speak first, your own voice becomes weak. The fifth thing is to control your breath. Slow it down. Deepen it. Breathing is how you take command of your nervous system. A calm breath produces a calm mind. Without this, the day starts in tension. The sixth thing is to sit in silence. No music, no noise, no distractions. Silence exposes the state of your mind. At first it may feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is where discipline is built. The seventh thing is to move your body. Train it, stretch it, wake it up. A lazy body creates a lazy mind. Movement creates clarity, strength, and confidence without words. The eighth thing is to experience discomfort on purpose. Cold water, hard movement, resistance. Comfort weakens you. Voluntary hardship strengthens your nervous system and prepares you for unavoidable difficulty. The ninth thing is to clean your environment. Clear your space. Put things in order. A cluttered environment feeds a cluttered mind. Discipline begins with respect for your surroundings. The 10th thing is to decide one non-negotiable task for the day, not a list. One task that must be completed regardless of mood. This gives the day direction and removes confusion. The 11th thing is to visualize resistance, not success. See the obstacles. See the distractions. See the excuses that will appear. Then see yourself acting anyway. The mind performs what it has already rehearsed. The 12th thing is to eat with discipline or fast with intention. Do not let appetite lead you. When you control hunger, you strengthen self-command. When hunger controls you, everything else will too. The 13th thing is to remind yourself that this day will never return. Time is not renewable. This awareness sharpens focus and removes waste. The 14th thing is to start with the hardest task. Do not delay it. Do not soften it. Face it directly. Once the hardest thing is done, the rest of the day becomes lighter. If you ignore the morning, the day will use you. If you master the morning, the day will serve you. The mind follows what is practiced, and what you practice every morning becomes who you are when pressure arrives. Discipline in the morning is not restriction, it is freedom. Because when you command yourself first, nothing else can command you for the rest of the day. Discipline is freedom because it removes chaos from life and replaces it with direction. Most people misunderstand freedom. They think freedom means doing whatever they want, whenever they want, without restriction. In reality, that kind of freedom is slavery to impulse, mood, comfort, and circumstance. When there is no discipline, the mind becomes reactive, the body becomes lazy, time gets wasted, potential fades quietly. Discipline, on the other hand, creates structure, and structure creates space. Within that space, real freedom appears. When you wake up without discipline, the day decides for you. Notifications control your attention. Emotions control your reactions. Hunger, tiredness, and boredom dictate your choices. You may believe you are free, but you are constantly responding instead of leading. Discipline changes this dynamic. When you decide in advance what time you wake up, how you train your body, what you eat, and how you work, you are no longer negotiating with yourself every moment. The decision is already made. Mental energy is saved, clarity increases, life feels lighter, not heavier. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. Every disciplined habit is a message to yourself that you can be trusted. When you keep promises to yourself, confidence grows naturally. You no longer need motivation because motivation is unreliable. Discipline works even when motivation disappears. On difficult days, discipline carries you forward without emotion, without drama, simply through action. This consistency builds strength quietly, day by day, until challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable. The disciplined mind is calm under pressure because it has been trained to endure discomfort. Most suffering in life comes not from pain itself, but from resistance to pain. Discipline teaches you to face discomfort directly, waking up early when it is hard, training when the body wants rest, staying focused when distraction is easier. Each small act of discipline strengthens the nervous system. Over time, discomfort loses its power. You realize that most limits were imagined, reinforced by avoidance rather than reality. Freedom appears when discipline removes internal conflict. An undisciplined person argues with themselves constantly. Should I work or scroll? Should I train or skip? Should I speak or stay silent? This constant debate creates mental noise and exhaustion. Discipline ends the argument. The rules are clear. The path is defined. When there is no debate, there is peace. When there is peace, there is freedom to direct attention fully into what matters. Discipline also protects you from regret. Many people carry the weight of unrealized potential, knowing they could have done more, been more, lived more fully. Discipline closes the gap between intention and action. It aligns who you are with who you want to become. Each disciplined choice is a step away from regret and towards self-mastery. Over time, this alignment creates a deep sense of inner stability that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. In relationships, discipline creates freedom as well. Emotional discipline allows you to respond instead of react. It prevents words spoken in anger that cannot be taken back. It allows patience, listening, and restraint. Physical discipline gives you energy and presence. Mental discipline allows honesty and clarity. Without discipline, relationships become unstable, driven by moods and impulses. With discipline, they become grounded, intentional, and resilient. Discipline frees time. When you plan, prioritize, and execute with consistency, tasks take less energy. Procrastination disappears. You stop carrying unfinished work in your mind. Time expands not because there is more of it, but because it is used intentionally. This freedom of time allows creativity, rest, and growth to exist without guilt. Rest becomes restorative instead of escapism because it is earned, not stolen. The body responds powerfully to discipline. Regular movement, controlled breathing, and mindful recovery create strength and vitality. A disciplined body does not constantly demand attention through pain, fatigue, or illness. It supports the mind instead of distracting it. Physical discipline creates the freedom to move through life with confidence, stability, and presence. It allows you to face challenges without feeling fragile. Discipline is also freedom from fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty and avoidance. When you consistently do difficult things, fear loses its authority. You learn through experience that you can survive discomfort, failure, and effort. This knowledge cannot be taught, it must be lived. Each disciplined action builds evidence that you are capable, resilient, and grounded. Fear becomes information rather than a command. Many believe discipline limits creativity, but the opposite is true. Creativity flourishes within structure. A disciplined routine creates predictable space where creativity can emerge without chaos. When the basics are handled automatically, the mind is free to explore, imagine, and innovate. Without discipline, creativity becomes sporadic and unreliable, appearing only when conditions feel perfect, which they rarely do. Ultimately, discipline is choosing long-term freedom over short-term pleasure. It is choosing who you want to become over who you are tempted to be in the moment. It is not rigid control, but conscious direction. The more disciplined you become, the fewer things control you. External circumstances lose their power to destabilize you. You move through life with intention, strength, and clarity, guided not by impulse, but by principle, aware that true freedom is not the absence of rules, but the mastery of self through consistent, deliberate action repeated daily, without negotiation. The morning decides the mind, because it sets the rhythm that the rest of the day follows. Before the world speaks to you, before demands noise and opinions enter your awareness, the mind is in its most receptive state. In this window, habits are not yet activated, emotions are not yet triggered, and attention is not yet fragmented. What you do in these first moments programs how you think, how you react, and how you carry yourself for the rest of the day. When the morning is rushed, the mind learns urgency. When the morning is chaotic, the mind becomes scattered. If the first action of the day is checking a phone, the mind is trained to seek external validation and stimulation. From that point forward, focus becomes difficult because the brain has already been conditioned to react rather than lead. The mind starts chasing instead of directing, consuming instead of creating, responding instead of observing. A calm, intentional morning trains the mind toward clarity. When you wake up at a consistent time, the nervous system stabilizes. The body learns safety and predictability. This reduces unconscious stress and prepares the mind for focused work. Structure in the morning removes uncertainty, and uncertainty is one of the greatest drains on mental energy. When the morning is structured, the mind does not waste energy deciding what to do next. The way you breathe in the morning directly affects your mental state. Shallow, rushed breathing keeps the body in a stressed mode. Slow, controlled breathing signals safety to the nervous system. This shifts the mind out of survival mode and into awareness. A mind that starts the day in awareness responds to challenges with reason instead of emotion. This single difference can change how conflict, pressure, and setbacks are experienced. Movement in the morning shapes mental resilience. When the body is activated early, blood flow increases, tension is released, and energy becomes available. The mind becomes sharper because it is supported by the body. Avoiding movement trains the mind towards stagnation and resistance. Choosing movement, even when uncomfortable, conditions the mind to face difficulty rather than avoid it. This habit quietly builds confidence and self-trust. Silence in the morning reveals the state of the mind. Without distractions, thoughts surface naturally. For many people, this is uncomfortable because it exposes anxiety, doubt, and restlessness. But avoiding silence does not remove these states, it only suppresses them. Meeting silence in the morning teaches the mind that it does not need constant stimulation. Over time, this reduces mental noise and increases emotional stability throughout the day. The morning also determines the quality of attention. Attention is limited, and how it is spent early influences how much remains later. Scrolling, multitasking, and consuming information early fragments attention. Focus becomes weaker as the day progresses. When attention is protected in the morning through intentional actions, it becomes stronger and more stable. The mind learns depth instead of speed, presence instead of distraction. Nutrition and hydration in the morning send signals to the brain. Overstimulating the system with sugar or caffeine before the body is ready can create spikes and crashes in energy and mood. Eating or fasting with intention teaches the mind discipline and patience. It reinforces the idea that urges do not need immediate satisfaction. This carries over into decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation throughout the day. The morning is also when identity is reinforced. Small actions communicate who you believe you are. Waking up early reinforces discipline. Making the bed reinforces order. Training reinforces strength. Sitting in stillness reinforces awareness. These actions are not significant individually, but together they form a pattern. The mind learns consistency, and consistency builds identity. Identity then shapes behavior automatically. When the morning lacks intention, the mind becomes vulnerable to external influence. Opinions, news, social media, and other people's emotions enter before self-awareness is established. The mind absorbs these influences unconsciously. Later, reactions feel justified but are often borrowed rather than chosen. An intentional morning builds a buffer. It establishes an internal reference point before the external world is allowed in. The first task of the day shapes confidence. Completing something difficult early sends a signal to the mind that effort is manageable. Avoiding difficulty sends the opposite message. This affects how the mind approaches challenges later. A mind that has already faced resistance is less likely to avoid it again. Momentum builds not through motivation, but through action. Stress tolerance is trained in the morning. When the day begins calmly, stresses feel proportional. When the day begins in stress, even small obstacles feel overwhelming. The nervous system cannot distinguish between real danger and perceived urgency. A rushed morning trains the body to remain in a heightened state, draining energy and clarity. A grounded morning allows stress to rise and fall naturally without accumulation. The morning decides whether the mind will be reactive or responsive. Reactivity is automatic and emotional. Responsiveness is conscious and measured. This distinction determines the quality of decisions, conversations, and outcomes throughout the day. A responsive mind listens, observes, and chooses. A reactive mind defends, rushes, and regrets. Over time, mornings compound. One intentional morning may feel insignificant, but repeated daily, it reshapes mental patterns. The mind becomes steadier, clearer, and more disciplined without force. Life begins to feel more manageable, not because challenges disappear, but because the mind is prepared to meet them. The morning does not just start the day, it trains the mind in how to live, how to endure, and how to lead itself through pressure, uncertainty, and opportunity without losing balance or direction. Control the body to control the mind, because the body is not separate from thought, emotion, or perception. The mind lives within the body, shaped by breath, posture, tension, movement, and physical habits. When the body is neglected, overstimulated, or weakened, the mind becomes unstable. When the body is trained, the mind gains clarity, discipline, and resilience. Mental strength does not begin with thinking differently, but with living differently through the body. The body is constantly sending signals to the brain. Tight muscles, shallow breathing, and poor posture communicate stress and threat. Slouched shoulders, collapsed chest, and slow reactions teach the mind fatigue and avoidance. Over time, these physical patterns become mental patterns. Anxiety, overthinking, and lack of confidence often begin as physical dysregulation rather than psychological weakness. By restoring control over the body, these patterns can be interrupted at their source. Breathing is the most direct bridge between body and mind. Fast, shallow breaths keep the nervous system in a state of urgency. Slow, deep breathing shifts the body into calm. This is not symbolic, it is physiological. The vagus nerve responds to breath, influencing heart rate, emotional regulation, and attention. When breathing is controlled, thoughts slow down, emotional reactions soften, clarity becomes available. A person who controls their breath can stabilize their mind even in chaos. Posture also shapes mental state. An upright posture with an open chest increases oxygen intake and signals confidence to the brain. A collapsed posture restricts breathing and reinforces defeat. These effects occur regardless of belief. The body does not wait for motivation or understanding. It responds immediately to position and movement. By adjusting posture, the mind is given a different internal environment, one that supports alertness and stability. Physical training is a form of mental training. When the body is challenged through strength, endurance, or flexibility, the mind learns persistence. Repetition under resistance builds tolerance for effort and discomfort. This tolerance transfers into mental tasks. Concentration improves. Frustration becomes manageable. Quitting feels less natural. The body teaches the mind that difficulty is not danger, just sensation that can be endured. Stillness of the body creates stillness of the mind. Many people attempt to calm their thoughts without addressing physical restlessness. A body that constantly fidgets, shifts, and seeks stimulation keeps the mind unsettled. Learning to sit still, to remain present without movement, trains the nervous system to tolerate quiet. This reduces impulsivity and increases awareness. Mental discipline grows from physical discipline. Control over the body also means control over impulses. Hunger, fatigue, and pleasure, seeking are bodily signals that influence decisions. When every signal is obeyed immediately, the mind becomes weak. Delaying gratification, choosing when to eat, when to rest, and when to move strengthens self-command. This does not mean ignoring the body, but listening without being ruled. The ability to feel an urge without acting on it is a sign of mastery. The body stores emotional tension. Stress, fear, and unresolved experiences manifest as tightness in muscles and restricted movement. This tension feeds back into the mind, creating unease and irritability. Through stretching, breathing, and mindful movement, tension is released. As the body softens, the mind follows. Emotional clarity often appears without intellectual effort, simply because the physical burden has been removed. Sleep is another form of body control that directly affects mental function. Poor sleep disrupts attention, emotional regulation, and decision-making. A disciplined sleep routine stabilizes hormones and restores cognitive capacity. The mind becomes sharper, more patient, and less reactive. Without sufficient rest, no amount of mental effort can compensate. Respecting the body's need for recovery is an act of mental responsibility. Pain tolerance is also linked to mental resilience. Training the body to endure controlled discomfort, such as cold exposure, sustained holds, or long sessions of effort, expands the mind's capacity to remain calm under pressure. The nervous system learns that discomfort does not require panic. This reduces fear and increases confidence. Life's challenges feel less threatening because the body has been trained to stay present under strain. The body provides immediate feedback. Unlike thoughts, which can be deceptive, the body is honest. Fatigue, tension, and imbalance reveal where discipline is lacking. Paying attention to these signals allows correction before mental breakdown occurs. A disciplined body becomes a reliable instrument, alerting the mind when adjustment is needed. Control does not mean rigidity. It means awareness and responsiveness. A controlled body moves efficiently, rests intentionally, and adapts smoothly. This adaptability supports mental flexibility. When the body is balanced, the mind becomes less extreme. Emotions rise and fall without overwhelming. Thoughts appear and pass without fixation. Over time, controlling the body reshapes identity. A person who trains regularly, breathes consciously, moves with intention, and rests properly develops a different sense of self. Confidence becomes embodied, not imagined. Discipline becomes natural, not forced. The mind no longer struggles to impose order, because order is already present in the physical foundation of daily life. Attempts to control the mind without controlling the body often lead to frustration. Thoughts cannot be commanded directly, but the conditions that produce them can be shaped. By mastering the body, the mind is influenced indirectly but powerfully. Calmness, focus, and clarity arise as natural consequences of physical alignment rather than mental effort, proving that true mental control begins with how the body is treated, trained, and respected each day. Stillness before motion is the foundation of clarity, because movement without awareness is just reaction. In a world that rewards speed, urgency, and constant activity, stillness appears unproductive. Yet every precise action, every controlled movement, and every meaningful decision begins in stillness. Without it, motion becomes scattered, wasteful, and driven by impulse rather than intention. When the mind is constantly moving, it cannot see clearly. Thoughts overlap, emotions blur, and decisions are rushed. Stillness creates space between thoughts, allowing awareness to emerge. In that space, perception sharpens. You begin to notice what is necessary and what is noise. Stillness does not stop thought, it organizes it. It gives the mind a reference point from which to move deliberately rather than reactively. The body reflects this principle. When the body is tense and restless, movement becomes inefficient and clumsy. Muscles overcompensate. Energy is wasted. When the body is still and aligned before movement, actions become smoother and more controlled. Athletes, martial artists, and craftsmen understand this instinctively. They pause before exertion. That pause is not hesitation, but preparation. It allows coordination between breath, posture, and intention. Stillness trains patience. The inability to remain still often reveals discomfort with oneself. Silence brings unresolved thoughts to the surface. The urge to move, speak, or distract is a form of avoidance. Learning to stay still teaches the nervous system that discomfort does not require escape. Over time, this builds emotional resilience. You become less reactive because you are no longer afraid of internal tension. Breath anchors stillness. When the breath is shallow and erratic, the mind follows the same pattern. When the breath slows, the mind settles. This physiological response allows stillness to be experienced without force. The body relaxes, and the mind enters a state of readiness. From this state, action becomes precise rather than rushed. Stillness before motion also applies to decision-making. Acting without reflection often leads to regret. A moment of stillness allows you to observe motivations, emotions, and consequences. It interrupts habitual patterns. Even a brief pause can change the quality of a response. The difference between reaction and response is stillness. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. In daily life, many mistakes are made not because of lack of effort, but because of lack of pause. speaking too quickly, acting too soon, committing without clarity. Stillness introduces restraint. Restraint is not weakness, it is control. The ability to wait, to observe, and to choose the right moment gives power to action. Without restraint, effort is scattered and ineffective. The mind that practices stillness becomes more efficient. Energy is conserved. Focus deepens. Instead of chasing multiple directions, attention is directed where it matters. This efficiency creates a sense of calm, even during intense activity. Movement arising from stillness feels lighter, because it is not burdened by excess tension or unnecessary thought. Emotionally, stillness prevents escalation. When emotions arise, the instinct is to act on them immediately. Stillness creates a buffer. Within that buffer, emotions can be felt without being expressed impulsively. This does not suppress emotion, it contains it. Containment allows understanding. Understanding allows wise action. Stillness also sharpens intuition. When external and internal noise decreases, subtle signals become noticeable. Body sensations, emotional shifts, and quiet insights are often missed in constant motion. Stillness creates the conditions for these signals to be perceived. Intuition is not mysterious, it is awareness unblocked by distraction. In training, stillness builds discipline. Holding a posture, maintaining balance, or remaining seated tests endurance in a different way than movement. It reveals weaknesses in concentration and patience. These weaknesses are not flaws but information. By observing them without reacting, the mind becomes steadier. This steadiness carries into movement, making action more controlled and deliberate. Stillness before motion also teaches humility. It reminds you that not every impulse deserves expression. Not every thought requires action. This restraint creates maturity. A mature mind is not defined by how much it does, but by how intentionally it acts. Movement guided by stillness has direction. Movement without stillness is noise. In moments of conflict, stillness is strength. The person who can pause while others rush gains advantage. They see options others miss. They respond with clarity rather than emotion. This calm presence influences the environment. Stillness has a stabilizing effect. It slows situations down, allowing better outcomes to emerge. Over time, practicing stillness reshapes behavior. You begin to move less but accomplish more. Words become fewer but more precise. Actions become simpler but more effective. Life feels less frantic, not because demands disappear, but because you meet them from a grounded place. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the source of right action. It is the moment where intention forms, where breath aligns with movement, where the mind commits fully to what follows. When stillness comes first, motion carries purpose, efficiency, and clarity, allowing every action to arise from awareness rather than impulse. Clarity comes from repetition, because understanding is not created in moments of inspiration, but through consistent exposure to the same actions, thoughts, and disciplines over time. Most people search for clarity by seeking new information, new strategies, or new motivation, believing that the next insight will suddenly make everything clear. In reality, clarity emerges when the mind no longer struggles with uncertainty, because the path has been walked enough times to become familiar. The first encounter with any practice is confusing. Movements feel awkward, decisions feel forced, and attention wavers. The mind is busy judging performance rather than understanding process. Repetition removes this noise. Each time an action is repeated, fewer questions need to be asked. The body remembers. The mind relaxes. What once required effort begins to feel natural. This shift is not dramatic, but it is powerful. Repetition trains perception. At the beginning, everything feels overwhelming because nothing stands out. With repeated exposure, patterns emerge. You begin to notice what matters and what does not. In training, unnecessary tension becomes obvious. In work, distractions become easier to identify. In life, false urgency loses its grip. Clarity is not added, it is revealed as confusion is stripped away. The mind resists repetition because it craves novelty. Novelty feels exciting and gives the illusion of progress. Repetition feels boring, and boredom is often mistaken for stagnation. In truth, boredom is a threshold. On the other side of it lies depth. When you stay with a practice long enough for novelty to disappear, attention deepens. Subtle improvements become visible. Small adjustments produce meaningful change. Repetition also builds trust. When you repeat an action consistently, You begin to trust the process rather than your fluctuating emotions. You stop questioning whether something works and start experiencing how it works. This trust reduces mental friction. Doubt fades, not because answers are intellectually convincing, but because experience has proven reliability. Clarity in decision making comes from repeated alignment between intention and action. Making the same disciplined choices daily removes ambiguity about values. You no longer ask who you are or what you stand for. Your actions answer those questions repeatedly. Identity becomes stable because it is reinforced through behavior, not thought. In the body, repetition creates efficiency. Movements become smoother. Energy is conserved. The nervous system learns coordination. This physical clarity translates into mental clarity. When the body knows what it is doing, the mind stops interfering. Overthinking decreases. Presence increases. Action becomes direct rather than hesitant. Mistakes are an essential part of repetition. Each repetition reveals errors, but also provides immediate feedback. Without repetition, mistakes feel personal. With repetition, mistakes become data. They lose emotional weight and gain instructional value. This shift reduces frustration and increases learning speed. Repetition also creates rhythm. Rhythm organizes effort and rest. When life has rhythm, chaos feels less overwhelming. The mind anticipates what comes next and prepares accordingly. This predictability reduces anxiety. Clarity thrives in rhythm because the mind is no longer constantly adjusting to uncertainty. In relationships, repetition builds understanding. Consistent communication, presence, and behavior reveal truth over time. One moment can be misleading. Patterns reveal reality. Clarity about people, situations, and boundaries emerges not from dramatic events, but from repeated interactions observed honestly. Mental clarity is often blocked by inconsistency. Starting and stopping creates confusion. Changing direction frequently prevents depth. Repetition allows momentum to build. Momentum simplifies choices. When you are already moving, less effort is required to continue. The mind prefers continuity, and repetition provides it. Discipline is repetition applied intentionally. It removes the need to decide repeatedly. The fewer decisions you make, the clearer your mind becomes. Decision fatigue disappears. Energy is directed toward execution rather than deliberation. This simplicity creates mental space. Repetition refines intuition. Intuition is often misunderstood as instinctive knowing. In reality, intuition is pattern recognition developed through experience. The more you repeat an action, the more information the subconscious absorbs. Decisions begin to feel obvious, because the mind has processed countless repetitions beneath awareness. Clarity does not mean certainty about outcomes. It means certainty about direction. Repetition clarifies direction because it removes alternatives through commitment. When you commit to repeating a path, distractions lose relevance. Focus narrows naturally. What once felt complicated becomes straightforward. The fear of wasting time often prevents repetition. People abandon practices too early, believing something else might be better. This constant searching creates confusion. Repetition requires patience and faith in gradual progress. Those who stay long enough experience clarity, not as a sudden revelation, but as a quiet confidence that grows unnoticed until it becomes undeniable. Repetition also builds resilience. Doing something consistently despite resistance strengthens resolve. Resistance loses its power when it is faced repeatedly. What once felt difficult becomes routine. The mind stops dramatizing effort. Calm replaces struggle. Over time, repetition removes excess. Movements become minimal. Thoughts become concise. Actions become intentional. This reduction is clarity. Complexity fades not because life becomes simpler, but because understanding deepens. When something is truly understood, it does not need elaboration. Clarity comes from repetition, because repetition reveals truth through experience. It replaces speculation with familiarity, doubt with trust, and confusion with recognition. The mind settles when it knows what to do, how to do it, and why it is doing it, and this knowing is built slowly through repeated, deliberate action that sharpens awareness, strengthens discipline, and aligns thought with reality until understanding becomes embodied rather than conceptual. You either command the day or obey it, because every day presents the same choice, whether consciously or unconsciously. The day does not wait for readiness or permission. It arrives with demands, distractions, and unexpected events. Without direction, the mind falls into reaction mode. Time is spent responding rather than leading. Energy is scattered across tasks chosen by urgency instead of importance. Obedience to the day feels normal because it is passive, but it quietly erodes control. Commanding the day begins before it starts. Intention established early shapes behavior later. When the mind knows what must be done, external interruptions lose power. Without intention, the loudest demand wins. Notifications, other people's priorities, and random impulses take over. This creates the illusion of productivity while real progress is delayed. Obedience looks busy but produces little that is meaningful. The mind is naturally drawn to what is easy and familiar. Without structure, it seeks comfort. Comfort rarely aligns with long-term goals. Commanding the day requires deciding in advance where attention will go. Attention is the most valuable resource. Once it is spent, it cannot be recovered. Those who command their day guard attention deliberately. Those who obey it give attention away freely, and then wonder why they feel drained. Time itself is neutral. It does not organize or prioritize. When left unmanaged, it fills with trivial tasks. Commanding the day means assigning time consciously. This reduces stress because the mind is no longer constantly deciding what to do next. Decisions are already made. Action becomes straightforward. Obedience keeps the mind in a perpetual state of choice, creating fatigue and frustration. Emotion plays a major role in obedience. When emotions dictate behavior, the day controls the individual. Mood determines effort. Stress determines tone. Fatigue determines commitment. Commanding the day means acting regardless of emotional fluctuation. Emotions are acknowledged but not followed blindly. This emotional discipline creates stability. The day may change, but the response remains consistent. The body reflects this dynamic. A body that wakes without routine moves sluggishly. Energy is reactive. A body that follows structure moves with purpose. Physical discipline in the morning establishes leadership over the body, which carries into mental discipline. When the body is directed intentionally, the mind follows. Without this, the body dictates behavior through cravings, fatigue, and discomfort. Obedience to the day often feels justified. Unexpected events, urgent requests, and obligations appear to demand immediate response. While flexibility is necessary, constant accommodation erodes direction. Commanding the day does not mean rigid control. It means knowing what matters most and protecting it. Priorities are honored even when circumstances shift. This requires clarity and courage. Many people confuse business with command. Being busy is often a sign of obedience. True command feels calmer. There is space between tasks. Focus is deeper. Movement is deliberate. When you command the day, you move through it with intention rather than urgency. The pace is chosen, not imposed. Language reveals this difference. Obedience uses phrases like "I had to," "I didn't have time, it just happened." Command uses phrases like "I chose to," "I decided," "I made time." These are not semantic differences but reflections of mindset. Responsibility replaces excuse. Agency replaces reaction. The hardest part of commanding the day is resisting distraction. Distraction is seductive because it offers immediate relief from effort. Each distraction pulls attention away from intention. Over time, this weakens self-trust. Command requires saying no repeatedly. No to unnecessary tasks. No to constant availability. No to impulses that feel good now but cost later. Commanding the day also means confronting resistance early. Difficult tasks avoided in the morning grow heavier as the day progresses. The mind becomes skilled at postponement. When the hardest task is faced first, momentum is created. Obedience delays discomfort. Command addresses it directly. Mental clarity increases when the day is commanded. There is less regret because actions align with intention. Even when outcomes are imperfect, effort feels honest. Obedience often ends with dissatisfaction because the day is spent but not directed. Time passes, but progress is unclear. Stress is often a symptom of obedience. Reacting all day keeps the nervous system activated. Command introduces predictability. Predictability calms the mind. Even in high-pressure environments, internal order reduces stress. Control is felt internally even when external conditions are unstable. Commanding the day strengthens identity. Each day becomes evidence of discipline. Self-respect grows through consistent action. Confidence becomes grounded, not inflated. Obedience erodes this foundation. Repeated days of reaction create a sense of drift. Purpose feels distant. The difference between commanding and obeying is not dramatic. It is made of small choices repeated daily, choosing to wake up intentionally, choosing to plan, choosing to focus, choosing to act despite resistance. These choices accumulate. Over time, life feels less chaotic and more directed. Commanding the day does not guarantee success, but it guarantees ownership. Ownership transforms experience. Challenges are faced rather than avoided. Mistakes are learned from rather than justified. Growth becomes inevitable because effort is consistent. Each morning, the day presents itself without instruction. It waits to be led or allowed to lead. Those who command it shape their experience through intention and discipline. Those who obey it surrender direction to circumstance, discovering too late that time has passed without purpose or control.